Hello, everybody, and welcome to another journey through the Gene Keys and conversations with Gene Keys guides and ambassadors. My name is Matthew Ashdown. I am a Gene Keys guide as well. I'm very excited to be having another conversation with one of my allies and friends in the world of Gene Keys, Laurie Andrews, who I'll introduce in just a moment. Before I do that, I just wanted to mention that some of you are probably feeling the anticipation in the field when it comes to the community of the Gene Keys, because Richard Rudd will be landing on terra firma in North America within the next few weeks here. And there's a fantastic event in Boulder, Colorado, taking place on the weekend of May the 13th and 14th. Primarily the 14th is the day of the event. And there's lots of fun activities, and Richard will be hosting this space. And who knows what's going to come out of his mystic mouth during that time. But it's going to be an extraordinary event. There's tickets available. I'll put the link in here below so that you can check that out. But I wanted to make a mention of that because you're probably hearing lots about it in the Gene Keys community. And if you can make your way to Boulder, Colorado for the live event, that would be absolutely fantastic. Laurie, my guest today, she will be there, as are others. And I'm sure you'll feel some of her anticipation and excitement for it today. And there's also a live streaming. So if you cannot make it to the live, and I highly recommend going to the live event if you can make your way to Boulder, Colorado, to be in the field of that experience of everybody. The energies of everybody there will be amazing. And if you cannot, then yes, watching the live stream event online, that is possible too. And so the links for all that are below. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that right off the beginning so I don't forget it later on. It's a big event for the Gene Keys community, and we're really excited for it. So hopefully see some of you there, and or if not see some of you there, have some of you see it from online. So into the mystic. All right, now we move into today's conversation. And so I have with me, as mentioned, another guide by the name of Laurie Andrews. And she is going to be sharing much from her journey and her explorations of the Gene Keys over the many years. And we have we have a commonality of who brought us into the world of Gene Keys, actually. But before that, I'll just get Laurie to kind of just introduce who she is and where she is, and then we can take it from there. So, Laurie, welcome.
Thanks so much, Matthew. It's great to be here. So happy to meet you in person. Well, kind of in person, but you know how it is online. It's like I've followed you for years, so I feel like I already know you. And it's like, Laurie, you've never met the man.
I know what you mean.
I'm looking forward to actually meeting you in person someday. So I am actually on the opposite coast of Matthew. Matthew's on the west coast of Canada, and I'm on the east coast of Canada, in the province of New Brunswick. Born and raised in Nova Scotia and moved to New Brunswick about 7 years ago. So this is my locale. I'm just outside of Moncton. Yeah.
Nice. Well, welcome. And yes, we're just on those opposite coasts. And now I'm really looking forward to exploring this origin story. And for you guys out there to hear of Laurie's, because every Gene Keys guide, although we're all Gene Keys guides, Laurie comes with her own eclectic background, I'm sure, like the rest of us, in terms of her energy work and healing work that she does. And so I know she's got a lot of wisdom here to share with everybody today. And we always I don't know if you've ever seen the X-Men movies, but they have the origin stories. And I feel like this is another bunch of mutants that we're talking to, and we're going through these origin stories. And so with Laurie now, I'd love to explore actually, I'd like to say first that both of us were introduced to the Gene Keys essentially by the same gentleman. That's Peter Tung, who I will be interviewing at some time in the very near future, who's a Gene Keys ambassador based here on Vancouver Island in Canada. And I believe that's how you came into the Gene Keys, Laurie, through him opening a door for you there. And I'd love to hear about that experience and just what shifted in your world as you came into the world of Gene Keys.
Absolutely. I love my Peter story. It was 2018, and I was listening to a podcast by Carrie Murphy.
Yes.
This gentleman, Peter Tung, was being interviewed and talking about the Gene Keys. And I just couldn't get enough. Yeah, I'm listening to him. I'm like, what is this magic he's talking about? And then somewhere through the conversation, he says that he's in Canada, and I'm like, I need to go see him. And literally, I'm still listening to the interview, and I'm looking at flights to BC, because I'm like, oh, something hooked me. And so he finishes the interview, and I'm just like, just coming out of my skin. I'm so excited about this. And literally, was on my phone and thinking, when can I go to Vancouver? And I need to get a hold of him. And I opened my Facebook, and one of my friends shared a poster, like literally within 2 hours of that interview. I pick up my phone and I look at it, and there's a poster that says, Gene Keys Ambassador Peter Tongue coming to Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. I literally was almost like, what's going on? What's happening? It was mind-blowing. So needless to say, email to Christine from Mahone Bay, who was bringing him in, and got myself registered. And it's been a life-altering experience. The Gene Keys themselves, Peter, and then the whole Mahone Bay Gene Keys family that we now have. That 2018 trip and having my profile done with Peter and diving in has just shifted my whole trajectory. And so since then, I've gone, Peter's probably been here, oh my gosh, at least I'd say half a dozen times that Peter's come back, and each time doing a different retreat: 7 Sacred Seals, Pathway of Individuation, 64 Names of Love, Epiphany Experience. And I also went, he did the 7 Sacred Seals in Mount Shasta, and I went out there. Christine and I went out there with him as well. So yeah, I really dove in. And then in 2021, when the guides program came out, I immediately dove into the guides program. So yeah, so Peter was here again last summer, stayed at my house. So yeah, we've become very good friends, and yeah, it's just been an amazing to look back at what's happened since 2018 is pretty special.
Yeah, it's interesting how it comes through. And I just love the serendipity too that you talked about there, how looking online and, oh, wait, he's coming here. That to me is the nature of this stuff, is like, it's when the student is ready, the teacher will literally appear on the side of the continent that you need them to be in, rather than having to book a plane ticket to go and see.
They find you, the Gene Keys find you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you've been cracked wide open by them, because it's been since 2018. And so you've done the guides program, but you also come from quite a background yourself prior to that, that's integrating, I'd love to hear how you're weaving together the things that you've been doing all these years and now weaving it in with the Gene Keys. Absolutely.
Yeah, my journey, I picked up my first self-help book at 18. So it's been a long journey, a long and winding path, as most are. But my main career was that I did frontline domestic violence for about 12 years. And so as a professional counselor in that field. And so that was really the beginning of this type of service work. And even then, I knew I wanted more. I knew I wanted to be able to help in a different way. Even though the work in domestic violence is all about empowerment, and I think that's why it ties so well, why the Gene Keys came in so easily to me, as it is about empowerment of self. And so when I left that career, though, of course not knowing what I know now, and giving too much of myself, I became very tired, to the point of burnout. It's a stressful job in itself, and then when you are empathic, and it can take a lot out of you. So I stepped back from that and wasn't sure if I wanted to continue in the service work, or if I could. I had to really go into myself, and take some time away to figure out what I wanted to do. So as things happen, of course, it worked out that I was able to do that and leave that career. And that's when I moved and began working for my husband's company. Just completely, it's a marine company, nothing to do with, service profession as far as, any psychology or helping people or anything. So I thought, that's just what I need. And at that point, when I first started, I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going back to that other work. So, that didn't last long. And before long, it started, I started needing more, and thought, in my own healing process, doing a lot of energy work, having a lot of energy healing done, body work done, I started to turn more into that area. So in those 7 years, just taking a ridiculous amount of courses and certifications, trying to kind of see what fit. And one thing that happened, of course, I was able to do a lot of courses and things within my career. And I guess the trajectory even started to shift within that when I was still working in domestic violence. It was in 2010, I went to Washington, D.C. for it was a world conference on domestic violence. And when I was there, one of the workshops was on trauma in the body. And it was from the University of Boston, I believe, and they were doing yoga for trauma in the body. And again, my ears just perked. And so that kind of started something about the body, and instead of just staying in the mind. So that kind of planted a seed. And then, and then some years later, started delving in more into the body work and trying to figure out, to make that connection, because very much in my mind and in intellectual and courses and reading. And I have the 62 in my EQ, which is the shadow of intellect. So I can get caught in there. I can get caught in my mind. And it wasn't working anymore. I knew for my own self and healing, and in order to help others on a more holistic basis, that I had to include the body. So doing different modalities, different energy healing. I did healing touch, 4 levels of healing touch work, just a list of certificates. And then I found yin yoga. And I had always done a little bit of yoga just for my own self. But I found a wonderful teacher here who taught yin yoga on a very, like her basis of teaching was more Ayurvedic. I just loved the approach. And so that really helped me to get in my body, bring the teachings into my body. And then, so that I can then give it from a more holistic place, because that's, that to me, how I've come to this place of kind of melding the two worlds. So my latest, what I've kind of really gravitated to is cranial sacral therapy. And there's this part I know for myself, and of course that's how, we know when we know ourselves. I wasn't grounded in my body enough to really let the teachings of the Gene Keys come into me. And I was literally finishing one of my levels of my teacher training in yoga and simultaneously doing a Pearl retreat. And I was on the floor listening to Richard talk. and I felt that the chart coming into me. Like I really felt the teachings. So I've come to this belief that, if we're not relaxed and comfortable in our body and settled, that it's really hard to take in that information and let it land, and that it, that we can then, really integrate it. So yeah, that's the overview.
Yeah, thank you for all that, Laurie. I love that introduction to the work and your background. And because one of the things I love is like people can make this huge pivot in their life, really, like you did when the Gene Keys came into your life, and it was this pause, and then it's this pivot into something seemingly new. But although the profession and the work changes, you still carry with you the essence of these Gene Keys. And I love that you're talking about this embodiment piece and the work that you're drawn to that's supporting you in that embodiment, because I think everybody who's working with the Gene Keys, if there's something that can support with that embodiment, bringing it out of just a contemplation in the mind to this. And The Art of Contemplation by Richard Rudd really dives into this, the book or the course material. But as you were sharing, it's like, yeah, it just, if you're making a pivot in your career and your life, and it seems like things are drastically different in terms of the external world, that's absolutely true. But I can hear a thread weaving through it in terms of your humanitarian nature, for instance, and how you like to serve and help people. And I'm wondering what Gene Key kind of comes alive for you in this contemplation of this, and if it's one in your profile, where it sits in your chart as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I have it in my notes to say, like, we're in the energy of the 27th Gene Key, and that is my radiance. So that's who I am.
And so the 27th, for those new to the Gene Keys, moves from shadow of selfishness to the gift of altruism to the city of selflessness. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but how are you experiencing that then?
Yeah, it's what's so great about that Gene Key. It really helped me to understand what happened prior in my career by not filling myself up. I wasn't giving I wasn't giving myself nourishment. I was just pouring nourishment out, but not filling myself back up. And so that's where the Gene Keys, to me, the Gene Keys, I call them, they're my spiritual nourishment. That's what they are for me. They give me that, we have to have all areas of our life, mind, body, spirit. And for me, that is my spiritual nourishment. So yeah, the 27th is all about, filling yourself up, giving to yourself first. And I came from that thinking before that all about giving out first and too much. So that key has helped me immensely in being able to work from a healthy place and not, overdoing, overgiving. And it's become who I am. And the Gene Keys, that's what they help. They help you see who you are, remember who you are, and you become who you are. This is now who I am, not just what I do. It is who I am.
Yeah, important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the 27 comes its programming partner of the 28th, which is my purpose sphere, which is the gift of totality, the shadow of purposelessness. So in what is the city of immortality. So that was a big one for me. That's my beingness in this world, and to have your beingness be a shadow of purposelessness, it's a challenge. It was a challenge. It was a challenge to understand that again, back to that, you become who you are. I had to stop chasing a purpose and just be.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do that, I had to really, and this is of course what the Gene Keys have helped me with. They help me really with the words for what I was feeling. The words for the shadows really helped me to understand what I was feeling, because for most of my life, I would not feel that. I would run from feeling shadow. I didn't want to feel bad. My mom had suffered from depression. So for me, if I started to feel bad, I thought that meant, oh my gosh, I must be getting depressed. We can't have that. And so perk up, right? So I would avoid that and just forget it, just push through. So I avoided a lot. So coming in, even though I had to get an understanding on that. So the allow, accept, and embrace piece is huge for me. It's huge. Like, now that I get it and I understand it and I can embody it, that I can allow in the body, that body piece, the allow, whatever, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't have to run. I can feel it. And I, it's that dance of feeling it and allowing it. And then, let it be what it's going to be and let it move through. I don't have to run from it. I don't have to stay in it, but I don't have to run from it. So I allow and I allow myself to sit with things where I wouldn't before. And accept where I'm at and what's going on. And just feel it, and stay with it. And the embrace, and it all just, it ties, like, the physical body, the emotional body, the acceptance that, it doesn't change. You are who you are. It doesn't take away from that. You embrace it. You love yourself for it and through it. And yeah, just understanding it through the mental body. You understand what's going on. That's been a huge piece for me to get.
And I can actually hear the whole theme. Like, even you're just like, I'm embracing the totality of it. This is my purpose, Gene Key. I'm embracing the totality of life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think you even said. And it just even, like, what I'm hearing too is you shared both for the 27 and the 28. It's like, for me, it's this, we're going through these archetypal journeys. So we didn't do anything wrong before. We were just getting the contrast. So your experience and this 28th gene key, which is about embracing the dark side anyway, right? So it's like, it has that theme of avoidance. It's going to avoid. So it's like, there's no judgment when we realize this. It's like, oh, it's just this awareness. It's like, oh, I have spent that life, a big part of my life avoiding. I think many of us could say I don't have the 28th gene key in my chart, but it's something that's I've reflected on a lot. I actually had a near-death experience, and on the day of the near-death experience, the 28th gene key was in transit. It was the pulse, so to speak, of that time. And so I thought, because this is one where we're kind of embracing that fear of death, right? And so that real interest for me in that particular day that had literally an impact on me. There was a lot of impacts that day. And and with the 27th gene key too, I'm hearing it, and I'd love to explore this one bit more, this 27th, and unpack it, because it really has those themes of the shadow frequency. There's the self-sacrifice, there's the two poles, and I think this is important to recognize. So when you hear the shadow of selfishness, quite often, some of the people I meet, most of the people I meet in this community are some of the most giving people that you'll meet in this. There's, it's like, well, I am altruistic, yes, and and at the same time, when that might be driven by a fear of appearing selfish or something like that, and that there might also be this self-sacrifice element. It's like, oh, because of this sense of purposelessness in the purpose gene key, then I have to do something out here in the world to give myself a sense of purpose, even if I sacrifice. Does that speak to any of that experience that you went through?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For a good part of my life, felt I had to self-sacrifice just to be here, to feel that worthiness and to put myself out there fully. And it's really been a game changer to bring the boundaries in on that, to really get healthy giving, to really get that. It still feels strange. There's still times when I feel like almost cold or what's the word? Kind of not harsh, but because I don't come off that, but internally I feel it because I'm being so clear in my boundaries and not overgiving. That's new territory still. So I still internally will feel like, oh, it takes some getting used to, but it all comes back to that intention, right? If we're not lined up, if that's not coming from the right place, and it's distorted and there's interference in the giving because it was coming from, a little bit of a block of, wanting something or wanting to appear nice or wanting everyone to like you, that's got interference. So so that really landed for me when I realized that if it's not coming from the right intention and I'm not really clear, well, it's going to just be a mess anyway. Like
Absolutely.
you're not helping anyone.
Yeah, when there's so that you're talking about that kind of giving with absolutely from the heart, with absolutely no expectation of something in return, right? It's like if I'm giving, but I'm actually waiting and hoping that somebody might love me in return, or they might give back to me in return, and so that giving becomes conditional. That's what you're speaking to there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's distorted, so then it causes distortion in the relationship, distortion in the field. So yeah, we have to be very clear on our why, so
Yeah.
that's what I do now. I get very clear on why I'm sharing, why I'm doing, that it's coming from a very clear place. So yeah, that really has been huge for me. Yeah.
As you're talking as well, it's also, I'm kind of thinking in terms of if we pair this gene key with different line numbers, for instance, like, it was for me, I've got a line 5 core wound, and I know a lot of people are contemplating their cores and gene key right now. So it was like guilt. There's the shadow of guilt. So it was always this feeling as I was never giving enough. Right. It was, I felt bad because I wasn't giving, even if I was giving, I wasn't giving enough. Even if I was giving from the heart, there was still that feeling that I wasn't giving enough. And so is that something that you've experienced in this as well, that it's like no matter how much I give, it's not enough?
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. I mean, that's my most of my life, never enough. It was never enough. I could never do enough. And it really wasn't until the gene keys that I started to get a real handle on that because I, gained that understanding on it. And then even first starting in the gene keys and I even see it in doing guidance sessions when I first start, just wanting to give everybody everything. Like, here it's all, tell them everything and everything in their chart. And it's like, And then I come back and I have 23.1 in my core. So I'm like, I would get way too complex. I'm like, no, that's not serving it.
Combine that with that 62. I can totally, I think this is like the beginners for any guide stepping out. It's like, I want to give you the most value. And it's like, but now I'm giving too much information.
Here's 16 pages of what I've written out. It's like, no.
Overwhelmed, too much, frazzled.
I'm continually fine-tuning, simplifying. That has become my mantra. You know, I keep coming back to that simplicity now with everything. And that just, you know, it kind of, like with everything, it just come back to that central channel, come back to the simplicity, you know, and share from there. And it brings me back down. So I get out of here and get out of, like, I need to tell you everything all at once. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I have to always come back to that. You know, it literally picture it, like bringing my energy and everything back here. And then share from that place. So that's where I'm at now with the Gene Keys, is, you know, really looking at my way of delivery, that is, you know, in a simple way that is very clear. And because again, same thing with anything, with my counseling work before, with the Gene Keys work, you can give too much. You can give too much. And to me, that's, you know, then we're overstepping again into someone else's energy. And it's theirs. You know, it's theirs to, and that's a big part of what draws me to the Gene Keys, because it essentially is a self-study program, you know, teaching. I have to keep reminding myself of that. It is not for me to do for them, because that's just taking away. That's, again, creating interference in their journey. So that's helped me to continually come back and simplify my process, so that I don't overdo, overshare, overgive, you know, and then create interference in their journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can resonate with all of that. And I think even with Richard Rudd, you know, the first book, the Gene Keys book, it's like this. And then I think through many years, now we've got the art of contemplation, which is when I first came into the Gene Keys and was guiding people, actually, I think it was a real gift in this way that firstly, my wife, but a lot of people I was working with had that 23, the 23rd Gene Key, from complexity to simplicity to quintessence. And so it could overwhelm them. And so I learned quite quickly there was that, oh, okay, I think I called the book that I was going to write, because of course I was going to turn it Gene Keys for 23s, right? And it's like, which I think the art of contemplation is exactly that. I think the art of contemplation is that simplicity. And I just love that reminder, because I think so often we can come into this body of work and it's like, there's so much information, there's so much, and it is the simplicity of, like you said, you came through, allow, accept, embrace. I think that's really the essentials of it. And I'm also curious now in this moment is what your brand sphere is, what Gene Key you have in your brand sphere. It feels like there's a radiance coming out of there as well.
Yeah. Can you tell I'm the storyteller? 56-6. Yeah.
Oh, it's the storyteller. That's what it is. Have a good story to tell. Okay, so the 56 moves from distraction to enrichment to the city of intoxication, and I can see where what you were just talking about there in terms of, like, I love seeing the hologenetic profile. It's got these individual keys. Right here we've got Laurie with this 56, the storyteller, but also knowing when it's becoming a distraction for somebody versus when it's becoming the essential story.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that was my journey, right? That I realized that I was getting distracted by all the things I was doing, you know, I had to bring myself back into what truly is enriching, because I would go off, oh, that looks like a good course, or that looks, you know, so and
Talk
that
about complexity there, right? It's like many different courses. Yeah.
so again, having to come back to what was truly enriching and simple. And I feel that now in my personal journey with the Gene Keys of, you know, ever since, especially doing the yoga, that time where I felt the embodiment, I've been able to kind of come to that place of letting it go a bit, you know, that I don't have to know everybody's numbers and everything and all that. And, you know, I've kind of come full circle in that, and being able to just be with the essential, you know, and really dive deeper in that part of it. So yeah, but again, it's one of those things that you can't go from A to Z, you know, you've got to go through it, you know, as much as, you know, I remember when I first started and to listen to Richard and Tan Mayo, and it'd be like, forget about the numbers and this and that, and it'd be like, what? What? You know, but until you go through it and get to that point, then it's like, okay, I see now. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. It's like, yeah, because even the numbers can become a distraction, like you said,
Oh,
but they can also be very enriching, and it's about how we approach it. And
that balance. Yeah.
it's to me, and I think the 62 explores this as well, the 62 gift of precision, but it's this, what I love about the Gene Keys is that they have quality and quantity. Yeah, quality and quantity. There's numbers have a quality to them or a quantity to them quite often. Like, so in mathematics and accounting and everything, it's got that quantity. And then number in the past, especially, but more and more so through the work of the Gene Keys, there's a quality. When we explore the number 62, we're not thinking about a quantity of anything. We're thinking about, you know, like even when we do the IQ sphere, people will ask me the first time, so is that my IQ? It's like, no, that's the gene key of your IQ, but that's not your actual IQ, which is a quantitative kind of measurement. And what you're talking there about the the essential, quintessential, like that made me think of there's that vocation sphere of yours, the quintessential. And so as far as, you know, yes, you're the storyteller, so I'd love to, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but I would love to know if there's kind of a story that's come alive for you through this journey with the Gene Keys, maybe for you or somebody that you know, just about this way in which they've become really, I can feel your enrichment throughout this journey and through this process. But I imagine you've got stories, and so I'd love to hear an example of a story that can enrich us at this time.
Oh yeah, I have a few, but my big one is my husband, Gilles. Um, he was traveling with me to one of Peter's retreats, and the retreat center was before our hotel. So I said to him, I said, it was Friday night. Peter always does a little introduction on a Friday night before a weekend retreat, kind of just introducing the Gene Keys and telling stories. And so I said to Jill, I said, you might as well just stay with me. It's only for a couple hours. Then we'll go down to the hotel instead of backtracking. And I said, Peter's super interesting, and you know, you'll enjoy it. And he's like, sure, you know. And so anyway, so in we go, and Peter's doing his thing and talking about the Gene Keys, but he also had brought some stones from Stonehenge. And so he was talking about these stones and the energy, and he said, I'm going to pass them around and just, you know, hold on to them, put them to your heart. And so anyway, he did that, and everyone was passing them around. And so I passed them to Jill, and Jill's basically like, what do I do with these rocks? You know, I said, just hold them. So he held them and, you know, did put them up to his heart and closed his eyes. And the next thing I know, he's starting to shake. And I just kind of look over, and his eyes are just huge. Anyway, I thought, pass them along. So he finally let them go. But he had it just opened him up. He saw this blazing orange red sphere, and it just his energy was just lifted. And so anyway, Peter had finished his talk, and we got Peter to talk to Jill and explain to him what had happened, and that they had activated him, and his system had become activated. And he's like, well, what do I do? Peter's like, well, you've got to get grounded. And so Christine, that was there, well, she's like, we gotta get you to the woods. You gotta hug a tree. He's like, hug a tree. Like, beautiful, lovely, open man. And he's just like blown away. He's like, what's happening to me? Anyway, he ended up, being able to get in the woods. He went and hugged the tree, and the same thing happened. He had another whole activation from the tree. So, yeah, so he's become very open to the gene keys. Needless to say, when your spouse asks, what are you doing? And you say, I'm going to another gene keys retreat. He's like, well, I'm coming too. So he's become best buddies with Peter, and we're still trying to get him grounded. He's still pretty activated.
There we go. Oh wow, that's a pretty cool story, and it's actually kind of synchronous in a way for me because I'd heard that story from Peter at some time ago, and where it had come up in conversation is because we were talking about those very rocks that are they're from the Preseli Mountains in Wales that were then shipped to Stonehenge. There's a whole other history that's so fascinating by them. But they're these little blue stones. Well, they're not little, rather. There's some pretty massive blue stones, and they happen to be from this blue stone quarry area that's actually on the west coast of Wales, and it's right by where my parents live. So when Peter had told me that story, and actually I hadn't heard the full story as you expressed it there, I'd been asking him. We'd been talking about the Preseli Hills, and he shared that story with Jill. So I love that that's the story you brought in there as well, and just that like he's into the gene keys, but it actually wasn't the gene keys necessarily that brought him in. It was this direct experience. And I can so relate to that with, for instance, my wife. For 10 years, I have said for 10 years, for 10 years, it feels like, but I would say for the last 12 years of working with the gene keys, I think my wife's read one page of the book. And ironically, it was the shadow of intolerance she was reading about. And she's like, no, put it down. I was like, let's see, there we go. And, um, but just the work with the dream arc is something that is connecting with her. And I think this is a really important piece. Both of us have spouses that are sort of leaning towards the gene keys and invested, like Nicole also loves Richard. Well, she loves Richard too, but Peter and Zia, and even though she's never dived into the gene keys per se, and I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, oh, I just need to get my spouse on board, but it's like, leave it to the universe. It'll hand them a rock. They'll hug a tree. Next thing you know, you'll be on the same or a journey together that's where you can continue to grow together. So yes, definitely an enriching story and experience. And I'd love to hear from Jill at some point and chat more. And I think I'm sure he and I would have other interests as well. But yeah, those rocks. I've got one myself here, and on an altar here, and it's just pretty special. So, and I love that about the Gene Keys community. So such a diverse areas of interest that merge together, and come into this space together. And so, yes, we've got the storytelling. So then the 60th Gene Key, that's your evolution sphere. You got anything you'd like to share on that one?
Oh, yeah, 60. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the gift of realism, shadow of limitation, and the city of justice. Oh my gosh, it's quite a key.
And being your evolution, I can imagine that it's
My nemesis.
it's
It's
one
been
of the
my
greater
nemesis.
challenges in life.
Oh yes. Again, that, battling that um, feeling of depression, thinking, I would feel like maybe I have depression, and it was that, that 60th, like pushing down on me. So the gene keys really, again, helped me understand that. And that limitation piece also in kind of finding my boundaries. Like it's about finding the right, the banks to the river, how I'm going to work, what's it going to look like, you know, um, I need that structure in there, that 60th that, brings in that structure. So yeah, it's taken me some time to get that 60th. And yeah, it's been a challenging one, but that's what it's about, right?
Would you say that you're someone then that, so you recognize this need for structures now, but is that something that you kind of had an aversion to before? Like, have you gone that whole, because I find with people with the 60th, they can either, when I meet them, they might be in one pole of the shadow or another, but they've sometimes experienced both poles. So either a total aversion to structures or getting bound up by them.
Yeah. Yeah, I've felt it both, and I've experienced both, and when I left my career with the counseling, I knew I didn't want to be, we were a government organization, and a lot of red tape. I knew I didn't want to be back in that. I knew I didn't want to do that. So that's something I've had to work with to make sure, and why I started my own business, because I couldn't go back into that structured, I had to have more, I had to have something with more flow, right? So
It
I had,
needed that spirit in it, that the element of spirit for you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there was limitations on, what, of course, you could do and talk about. And
Yep.
I knew I was shifting, and of course, not as clearly, of course, hindsight's 2020. But looking back, I could see, I was being moved out of that so that I could expand, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I hear this for so many people that I've met with that 60th gene key as well, where they're, yeah, I was just talking to somebody the other day and she's a doctor and she's been a traditional allopathic doctor her whole life. And then, but this opened up to the world of spirit in so many ways over the last number of years and has wanted to kind of find that jive with that. And another person that I know who's a shamanic psychologist, right? And it's how do you do that within these confines of this particular system at this particular time? And so I'm always intrigued, especially if it's your evolution sphere. This is like a real gift for you um
And
to any space you're part of.
when you get to this place of realizing, we're not separate pieces, we can't just do mind work, and we have a body and we have a soul, it's all got to be there, or it's, just like with the chart, our chart, even though when you look at it and it's all these separate pieces, it's all one. We're all one. We're like the Russian dolls. I have my Russian doll up there, you know? And so, yeah, when you're in a position where you can't bring all pieces in, it's tough. It's fragmented, right? So yeah, I needed that space to be able to bring all in, and that's what I do. It's basically finding my tagline is finding the flow of the mind, body, and soul. So I could bring all pieces together.
I love that. Finding the flow of mind, body, and soul.
Right.
That's a good tagline. That sounds like a very 60th Gene Key tagline. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we're not separate parts. It's
Yeah.
all there. It's all here. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I would say that's definitely a great exploration as well for those Gene Keys.
I've got to tell you that the name of my business is Blue Spirit Energetics. And also up there on my top shelf is Archangel Michael, because I have 40.1 is my pearl. So I had to bring in the blue ray, Archangel Michael. So yeah.
And I just finished working with a group of people yesterday with the 7 sacred seals. And of course, who do we end with but Archangel Michael? So thank you, Michael. Thank you for being present here today.
Perfect.
I don't have the 40th Gene Key in my chart, but a deep affinity for Archangel Michael. I was born on one of Archangel Michael's feast days in St. Michael's Hospital on St. Michael's Hill in Bristol in the UK. I had to ask my mom why she called me Matthew, but
Yeah.
she had her reasons. And actually, my wife said she probably wouldn't have, her brother's name is Michael, so she probably wouldn't have noticed me if my name was Michael. So you never know what's weaving in this tapestry of life. So Blue Spirit is your this is your business, and this is where people can reach you for one-on-one sessions. And so
bluespiritenergetics.ca. Yep.
And so you'll work with people's gene keys, but and I think this is the essence of the simplicity piece too. Like so often I'll meet, energy healers that have got this long list of different things that they offer, but you bring it all together, I'm sure, in the quintessence of it.
Yes.
And so somebody coming to you is receiving this support, and you might draw upon the gene keys in that session, but you're also working with the energetics and you're working with the body. So
cranial sacral therapy, the energy work, and the gene keys. That's it.
Beautiful. I love it. That's a beautiful combination of keys. And so I will have your website running below here so people will be able to reach out to you and contact you, and so they can book sessions with you. Now, do you do any energetic sessions online, or is it all in person?
No, for now, I'm just doing the energetic work online. I have done, work in that, but my preference is in person for now. And the gene keys, of course, can be done online.
So there you go. So if you're in other parts of the world and you want an online session with Laurie, you can book those. But the in-person, that's where you get the mega treatment. That's where you make a trip out to the east coast of Canada, to New Brunswick.
Awesome. I'd love to read this little quote from Richard, just because it just tied into my business so well that it's my absolute favorite. It's from the 57th. It's the city Clarity. Among humans, the art of gentleness is the greatest of the lost arts. We do not realize that the more softly we lay our hands upon something, the more it opens to us and the more deeply we can access it. That, to me, is the essence of my work. Cranial sacral therapy is gentle touch. It's all about just letting the body feel the support and the safety. And when I read that, I thought, there we go. There's the melding of the two. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that actually, my last question was going to be if there was any kind of like last tips or guidance that you would offer somebody. And it sounds like you just psychically answered that with that particular. So gentleness. Yeah. That's one of the 4 foundational principles of the gene keys. And that was, so that's something that just really sums up who you are.
Yeah.
And this approach to it. Beautiful. Well, I cannot believe it's already been an hour. We've explored a lot there. I hope that you enjoyed yourself. I've definitely enjoyed my time in exploring this 27th gene key and unpacking that with you, and all the others as well. We really explored your whole activation sequence in a way. But this 27th gene key that's alive for so many people right now, I think you offered so much there in terms of lived wisdom of how to really truly give from the heart, so that you're also nourishing yourself in these experiences in life as well. So any final thoughts you did want to share before we bring it to a close today?
I think the only thing I would leave with is that just to remind people that it is their journey. I think the biggest thing we all can take away is that we need, knowing ourselves, being our own project, putting our effort and energy into us. That's our best use of our energy, to kind of pull away from that external and bring it in. And that, the Gene Keys can help you do that as one of the tools, but whatever resonates with people, to bring them into themselves. It's the greatest work we can do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels so important in these times. And yeah, if I would just say anything too, just, like we shared, how the core stability, which is really our radiance and purpose gene keys, that's, who you were. Your core stability was there in your work as when you were working with women in violence, and it's there in your work now. It's just taken on a different form, but you still have that core stability there. So I really love that. And I'm going to just say thank you for being here with me today, Laurie. Thank you for exploring all this, and thank you for bringing your wisdom. And I know it's going to inspire those who are similarly looking to know themselves in this journey and trusting themselves, and perhaps who some of those gene keys that they have in their charts might have a new, fresh perspective on it. And so thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. And all of her details are below, so you can reach out, find out more about Laurie that way. And I know Laurie's one of the people that's very excited for this journey in a couple of weeks now, less than a couple of weeks, into the Mystic. You're going to be there physically in Boulder, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I can't wait. Very excited. Very excited. Very excited to meet Richard, and very excited to be with other guides and Gene Keys family and be in that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that you all know it, this is, if you're wondering, oh, is this appropriate for me? Like, Into the Mystic is going to be it's going to be typical Richard mysticism, where it will offer something to the journeyers who've been in it, as for 12 years, for 5 years, and those of you who are brand new and have never heard of the Gene Keys before. Richard has this gentleness and knowing about him, about what's needed in any space. So don't feel like you need to know about the Gene Keys in order to be able to show up here, receive. It's going to be a transmission. It's a transmission as much as anything. The knowledge, the information, that will all come later. But I'm sure that this will be an amazing transmission that Richard brings to this space, and that the field of people there gathering this is what's been called for, and this is what Richard's going to step into. So very much looking forward to it. I will probably be watching it online. I could go there, but I have a trip to England coming up a month later, and so I am directing most of my energy and resources and planning to that. But I know there will be other Gene Keys meetups. We're planning some, so I know there will be other ones if you happen not to be able to make this. But check out Into the Mystic. I've got the link below there as well. And again, we'll do this again next week. We'll bring in more guides, more ambassadors, and others from the Gene Keys community that are contemplating sitting with the Gene Keys, have wisdom and insights to share from their own lived experiences. And so I look forward to sharing more of these wonderful people with you over the coming months. And thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you once again to Laurie, and thank you all.